Hey, fellow authors. It's Carissa here from Author Revolution. Now, this August, we're really excited to introduce our new quantum manifestation mind magic meditations and hypnoses designed to help you align with your highest potential. Inside Your Future Self, which is Tammy and my monthly meditation and hypnosis membership for authors, you'll get access to these powerful programs along with our other themes like Money Muse, The Healthy Author, and New Beginnings. With 10 programs to keep you on track, there's something for every aspect of your writing journey. Join now and enjoy your first week absolutely free. Visit authorrevolution.org/YFS to get started. Transform your writing and your life with quantum manifestation mind magic this August. Don't miss out. Welcome to the Author Revolution podcast, where change is not just embraced, it's celebrated. I'm Carissa Andrews, international best-selling author, indie author coach, and your navigator through the ever-evolving landscape of authorship. Are you ready to harness the power of your mind and the latest innovations in technology for your writing journey? If you're passionate about manifesting your dreams and pioneering new writing frontiers, then you're in the perfect place. Here, we merge the mystical woo of writing with the exciting advancements of the modern world. We dive into the realms of mindset, manifestation, and the transformative magic that occurs when you believe in the impossible. We also venture into the world of futuristic technologies and strategies, preparing you for the next chapter in your author career. Every week, we explore new ways to revolutionize your writing and publishing experience. From AI to breakthrough thinking, this podcast is your gateway to a world where creativity meets innovation. Whether you're penning your first novel or expanding your literary empire, whether you're a devotee of the pen or a digital storyteller, this podcast is where your author revolution gains momentum. So join me in this journey to continue growth and transformation. It's time to redefine what it means to be an author in today's dynamic world. This is the Author Revolution podcast, and your author revolution starts now. Hey guys, welcome to a very special episode of the Author Revolution podcast. For those of you who have been hanging out with me this year, you already know that this was an episode that had a long story, it's been a long time coming, basically. But it's also been really fast in the same essence of like, okay, so I've been in the works of doing this thing with Jen since my anniversary, and now it's here. It also feels so fast because this episode was never something that was on my agenda. It literally came to me from a meditation. And now, rather than going into it, I talk about it in this podcast episode. But I am just so grateful, so pleased, so proud, so excited to finally be able to share with you my podcast interview with the very awesome, gracious, wonderful Jen Sincero. It is just a highlight of my year to be able to interview her and to be finally able to bring you this podcast episode. So, without further ado, let's get into this amazing interview and listen to all of the gems and golden nuggets that Jen has to say. You're going to absolutely adore this one. Well, hi, Jen. Welcome to the Author Revolution podcast. I am so excited to bring you on the show. My listeners have heard me talk about the story of how I kind of came into your world and how this whole situation happened. But for those of my listeners who maybe don't know who you are just yet, which seems highly unlikely at this point, do you want to give a little background about who you are and what you do?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm an author and a coach. And let's see, I don't know how to sum this up. I don't know. I guess I was a
lot.
the financial department. And then and I read all the self-help books and hired a coach and then decided that I was going to write my own self-help book. I was a writer before I was doing all that anyway. And I wrote, You Are a Badass. And then the miracle of miracles happened and it totally took off. And yeah, and then You're a Badass at Making Money and a million other badass books and stuff.
I love that. Yeah, I even have your journal. I've obviously joined your
Oh,
badass.
thanks.
I love it. It's so great. It just keeps me in that badassery vibe of like, of course I can do this thing, especially when days get rough. I don't know if you get that a lot where people are like, oh my God, this book just keeps me in the right mindset all the time. I love it.
Oh, good. I'm glad because that's fairly new. We're not sure how people are responding. So I'm happy to hear that it's working
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. I do it all, like one page typically every day. Well, sometimes it's two because sometimes there's like a little instruction on the one side and then other stuff. It's really
Right,
great.
right. Oh,
Yeah.
good. I should do my journal.
Yeah.
Should
You
all
should. It's great.
yeah, yeah.
It was so funny because when I've had You're a Badass at Making Money on my TBR for I don't even know how long. It literally the physical book, the one back here, was on my TBR. I'm like, I gotta read this thing. And I've got all these other things going on. And then on my anniversary this year, I was in Barnes Noble because that's what we do when you're married for 12 years, I guess, go to the bookstore. And your 10th anniversary edition of You're a Badass was like calling to me. It was like, come hither, you must read this thing. It was like I don't know, it's so weird, like the lighting and everything. I was like, okay, there's something about this book. I need to buy this book.
The
It was so
lightning that we
crazy.
put to cover. Excellent.
Yeah. So I ended up reading that one first and then of course devoured the next book, ended up in your group coaching because I was like, I need to be in the energy of this lady. She is just, I love her badassery. I love the kick-assness. And so
Thank
for me,
you.
the books were a huge reason why you and I got connected. So you kind of mentioned it briefly, but do you think when you first started writing these books that they were going to take off in the way that they did, that they were going to be this huge success?
My God. Absolutely not.
Really?
No, I
For
just
those of
wrote
us who are
them.
trying to like get our mindset over, of course it's going to be perfect. It's going to be amazing. It's like,
Oh,
what?
listen, I was excited about it and I knew that there wasn't anything out there like it at the time.
Yeah.
And I knew it was meant to be in the world and I knew that there were people out there who needed to hear it. So I had all that stuff, but no way in hell did I think it was going to be the rocket ship that it ended up being. I thought it was just going to be a good sort of calling card for my coaching business. That's the main thing. And yeah, so all of this is just flabbergastingly awesome. And
Right.
and you never know. And I do think though anybody who's called to write something, there's a reason. I think a lot of us, I mean, I know I certainly did, especially when I was playing music. I was like, everybody wants to be a rock star, but not everybody does, and so you get
Yeah.
your own things because you're you, and that's important and it matters. And there's a reason. So you got to do it.
Right. Right. So out of the badass books, which one was your favorite to write? Do you have a favorite one?
Probably You're a Badass Every Day because it was the easiest.
Really? Actually, I have that
Yeah,
one too. I haven't read that one though, because it's so much smaller. It was like, okay,
it's
I'm gonna go back to that.
smaller. It's
Yeah.
just like one thought per page. I didn't
Yeah.
have to have any continuation of whatever the hell. No, just easy.
Making sure your thoughts were cohesive, right? It's like,
Uh-huh.
what was I trying to say again? Yeah, I get that
Right,
one.
right.
Oh gosh. Okay, so it's kind of funny because in your book, you often talk about how you're 40, you were broke, you were living in a converted garage, and finally decided to like get out of your own way and like kick your BS to the curb, which I love that BS is like the acronym or the abbreviation for big snooze, which is like basically your ego. I love how all that comes together. It's just great. So what do you think was your number one thing? We have a lot of authors who listen to the podcast who feel stuck or who are wanting to break that barrier. So what was the one thing that really pushed that mindset to go past your big snooze and into your new badass trajectory? Like, was there like a catalyst moment, or was there just a gradual like, I can't take this anymore?
Um, Probably the latter. I mean, I don't think we all have a thunderbolt moment. I think that's,
Yeah.
you know, and at the same time, I do think we get these what we call aha moments where suddenly something. I think it's a combination of both, right? Like you
Yeah.
repeat the same thing over and over and over and over that's not working for you, and then all of a sudden it's like, aha! Like I don't have to do this anymore. So I think it's sort
Yeah.
of both. And so for me, I mean, my whole thing was around making money, and it's I was just so sick of making all my decisions based on how much it cost and not being able to do stuff. I mean, and first of all, being broke is really boring, and it makes you feel like a
Right.
big fat loser, and so and one of the biggest shoves for me was just like, seriously, this is the best I can do, and that was just honestly couldn't take it anymore. And I also did have, so there was that sort of buildup of just, living this scrappy life. And then I'm a big believer in just taking action because we can talk ourselves out of anything in our minds, and our minds are very locked into our quote unquote reality and what we know. And we base all of our decisions and all our thoughts about what's possible based on what's in front of us and our past history and all that garbage. And so if you really want to make a quantum leap, you've got to not come from that place of your current identity. And so I think you take action, especially action that scares the hell out of you. And the reason it scares the hell out of you is because it's outside your comfort zone. That's when you set yourself up for some pretty awesome stuff to happen. So I did that. I was going to all these coaching seminars and hearing coaches speak on stage. And one of the most amazing things, and I did write about this in Your Badass at Making Money, was seeing this one coach speak, and he was really speaking my language, and everything he said felt like it was directed to me. And at the end of it, he was offering his coaching programs, and I was like, I've got to work with this guy. I don't care what it takes. And he mentioned that his fee was $85,000 a year, and I was making like 30 a year. But because I had been doing all the mindset work on money and expanding what I thought was possible for myself, instead of going directly to that's highway robbery, this guy's an asshole, like there's no way in hell I can afford this no matter how hard I work. Like there's just absolutely no way. Instead of going to my usual long list of very, quote unquote, reasonable excuses, instead, because I've been doing the mindset work, I was like, where's my $85,000? How am I going to figure this out? And it was just that change of thought. And that was such a huge moment for me, because it literally brought up this image of my dad in his little sweater with his sneakers on, looking down at his feet, really, really sad. And I get a lot of sort of visual flashes when I have my aha moments. Yeah. And I realized that the way he showed love was by giving me a 20 every time he saw me. And I was like, if I get rich, my dad will feel unloved. And that was one of my biggest, gnarliest blocks, was I can't make more money than my father because it'll be like stabbing him in the heart. And so that was huge. And it never would have happened if I hadn't gone to this seminar that I totally didn't want to go to because it was so cheesy and I was, way too cool and all that stuff. So just keep putting yourself in situations that are uncomfortable, that are in the direction of where you want to go. And that's where all the good stuff is.
I think that's so important too. It sounds to me like you probably have high activator in your Clifton strengths, because for me,
what did you just say?
High activator. Yeah.
Even mean.
It's a strength. So Clifton strengths, when you're trying to figure out Clifton. Yep. The Clifton strengths. Yeah. So you're finding out what your strengths are, right? And so for me, activator is high up there. I take a lot of action and I do a lot of things, but it wasn't for me. Your books were kind of an aha that I'm taking a lot of action, but I'm not doing a lot of things that are absolutely terrifying to me, because I'm so used to doing certain actions and I can do things very quickly. I get a lot done, but that's kind of been my stuck moment where it's like, I'm just doing the same kind of things and I'm not putting myself into positions that scare the hell out of me. And talking to you or bringing you onto the show is definitely one of those. It was so funny because before I joined your program, I was doing this meditation thing and I talked about it on the podcast. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take action in anything that comes from my meditations. Any big, small, doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this thing. And when I joined your group coaching, I was like, this woman, I just want to be in her energy. There's nothing I really have to ask her because I get what she's saying. And I just want to be around her and the people that she's around because it's amazing. And literally after that first call in my meditation the next day, it was like, no, here's why you got the book. Here's why you joined the coaching. Here's why you're going to ask her to come on the show. And she's already said yes. And I was like, wait, what now? Can I just email her? Because that would be easier. And it was like very hard no.
I just want you to know I never do this. So you're a good witch. Woo! You're a very good witch, lady.
Excellent. Well, I'm so blessed. And for whatever reason, I just followed the nudges and here I am. And I think that's so important. It pushed me so far out of my comfort zone that I was like, oh my God. And I had to wait a full month to finally ask you the question because it was literally the day after the first call. And then the second week I had my hand raised, but I was like right at the cutoff point. And I was like, dang it. And so I had to wait again until the next one, 2 more weeks later. I was like, oh yeah. So 4 weeks I was sitting on this. I have to ask Jen this question. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. So that was quite an interesting experience and probably the scariest one I've done lately. Even though you're not scary at all. You're amazing. But that was scary to put myself out of the comfort zone.
Hey there, authors. Are you ready for a unique writing challenge? I'd love for you to enter our Hits Different Short Story Awards for a chance to win first, second, or third place prizes. But here's the twist. You've gotta meditate to get your short story idea before you write it. Once you've received your hit, feel free to create your masterpiece. Head over to authorrevolution.org/hits different to learn more and sign up. Unleash your creativity and let your story hit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you do stuff like that every day, imagine how different your life would be.
Right. I so agree with you. There's something about that terror statement that just, well, I think that that's actually a question I have for you. So why do you think that is? Like, why do you think it's the scary, uncomfortable stuff that does create the leaps in manifestation? And is there another, do you happen to have another example of yourself about when you had a quantum leap because you did something terrifying?
Yeah. I mean, it's the reason it happens is because you're breaking out of your habitual way of being and you're not subscribing to the now or the perceived now.
Right.
We've got there's a gazillion, right in this very moment, there's a gazillion different things you could actually focus on that are all equally as quote unquote true. And what you focus on, you decide is the truth. So when you shift your focus and focus on something you've never focused on before that seems out of your reach, and you go for it, that also is true. There's that great line in The Science of Getting Rich that I quote all the time that says, to think what you want to think is to think the truth, regardless of appearances. And so when even though it appears that I was living in a garage and I was making no money and I sucked at making money and all the things, I wanted to work with this guy. So focusing on the truth that I could somehow find $85,000, which I ended up doing, and then totally changed my life. That was probably, to answer your other question, the scariest thing I've ever done was pay that kind of money for a coach and ask for it. And yeah, that was terrifying.
I love that you talk about, how the thing that you want already exists. And it's really just like you just said, changing your focus onto the thing being yours and manifesting it in that way. So I'm, number one, curious, do you study quantum physics? And then number two, what does your badass process look like now when you're trying to get your energy behind the manifestation of the next thing? Because obviously you've proven to yourself you can do these things, but has it evolved since you?
It's always, we're always where we're at in the moment. And I am in a really interesting spot where I've never been before, which, people often find themselves. So currently I'm in a very lovely, lovely place where I'm not under contract for any more books. I don't have to work if I don't want to. And I'm trying to figure out what the next thing is, because I don't know about you, but like every decade I sort of shed old desires and old ways of being and have to figure out what the new ones are. So I know a lot of what I don't want anymore. Yeah. And I'm really trying to settle into what I do want, what really lights me up and what I want to do. And I mean, really, I have been sitting around, I've been traveling my ass off and visiting my friends and going on lots of outdoor excursions. And it's been super duper fun. And I'm starting to get a little bit bored. So but I know what I don't want. I'm not quite sure what it is that I do want yet. So for me right now, my process is meditating a lot and I'm super excited to take this incredible opportunity to not pay attention to should. Like there's a lot of stuff that I quote unquote should do, or that I could do, or that other people want me to do, and separating from that and coming from a place of just seriously what I want to do. And it's interesting how challenging that can be, because we're so used to being a certain person who does, like, am I ever going to write another book? I don't know, but that's what my agent wants, and that's what I should do, and that's what people expect me to do. I don't know if I want to. So that's so I'm just sort of getting clear on that, and it's uncomfortable not knowing, and it's also cool.
It is very cool, that uncomfortability of like being in between knowing. I definitely feel that vibe. It's such a weird place, but I think when you do start to make those tiny baby steps or start reaching for that thing that actually lights you up, even if if there's so many people, like you said, we're conditioned to think that just because this thing is huge, just because a lot of people want more of it, then we should probably be doing these things. But if you're taking guidance from meditations, from the source, from higher self, from whatever, you are tapped into that consciousness in a way that they're not. And so you have to trust like your abilities of where do you go next? And is it that thing, or is it actually something else that's going to light you up even further? And so I think that's really brave. There's a lot of people who don't walk that path and who aren't willing to experiment with that, really, honestly, just to take that as an experiment and see where does it lead them, you know?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, like an experiment, like it's not going to kill you. Did you ever watch, I don't know if you're a fan, but Linda Ronstadt's documentary?
I didn't know.
I'm a huge fan anyway, but
Okay.
I loved it. So there was this whole thing about, she was humongoidal, like she was the biggest pop star and blah, 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 but she loved musicals. And so she decided she was going to do the Pirates of Penzance and put that album out, and her record company was like, great, have fun ruining your entire career. Like your audience doesn't care at all about musicals, puts it out, enormous success. And then she does it again with this like Mexican crooner album. I think her dad was Mexican. He was, singing traditional Mexican folk music or whatever the hell. And so then she does that, and they're like, they're dying. All the money people are like, oh my God, we just lost our biggest cash cow. And it's still like the number one selling album in this genre. And it's what she wanted to do. And she took such a risk of just like dropping off the face of the earth, but that's really what she was called to do. And I always think of her. I'm like, hey, what's my Mexican crooner album now? Like,
right. What's this crazy thing that I can do next? That's going to be amazing. I think I love that. And it has that badassery vibe too, because then it's you locking into the knowing that whatever's coming in for you, it gets to be yours. And for whatever reason, there is a specialness about it. Like you have to do this thing. And when you lock into the knowing it, I love that like so many manifestation teachers talk about that vibe of know, like just know that it's yours, and it like lock into that, and that becomes your modus operandi basically. But I like the way you describe it more as like being your badass self, because of course you get this thing like, and it's just interesting to see when we take those steps, when we take those action steps and just tap into the thing that really does light us up, it can do strange things, even when people outside of us are going, well, what in the hell are you even doing? What kind of stuff is this? It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, you talk about gratitude, and I love this concept of that gratitude and faith combined. It's the high holy mighty of manifesting. I love the way you word things. Your sense of humor is epic. I love it. So could you give my audience a little bit of advice on how to lock in these two vital pieces when they're manifesting, and why it's so crucial that they do?
Hi again, revolutionary author. It's Carissa. Want to dive deeper into quantum manifestation? This month's Author Revolution Masterclass is all about the autonomic nervous system and how our energy plays a crucial role in manifestation. So join me for Burnout to Balance, using heart coherence to navigate your author career on August 16th, 2024 at 1 p.m. Central Time. Discover how to use heart coherence to balance your energy and supercharge your writing journey. Head over to authorrevolution.org/masterclass to get signed up. Don't miss this transformational session.
So with gratitude, so like we were talking about earlier, how right now there's a gazillion different things you can focus on. You can focus on the things that upset you, or you can focus on the things that excite you, and, focus on your desire, or focus on the fact that it hasn't shown up yet, or whatever. You always, always, always have a choice. And gratitude is so powerful, because if we're going to get, I'm going to say woo-woo, but I'm super pro woo-woo.
My audience is woo. We're good.
Okay.
We're good.
All right, wooers. Lack of resistance is everything. In fact, if you see my mug, it says allow.
I love it.
It is everything. And gratitude puts you in a state of allowance. So when let's say that you need money and you don't have any and you're freaking out about it all the time, instead of focusing on the fact that you don't have it, focus on all the things that you're so grateful for. Even if it has nothing to do with money, it's more about getting out of that state of terror and resistance and white knuckling it and into a place of flow, right? So gratitude is the ultimate state of flow and allowance and surrender. So again, every single one of us has a gazillion things in our lives that we could be like tearfully grateful over, right? So it's about getting yourself in the flow so that you can then receive more of the energy and the things that you're focused on, that you're focused on. So that's not a very good sentence. Okay. Faith. So faith is kind of the same thing as in gratitude. So when you're having faith that, let's take money again as an example. If you're having faith that the money that you desire already exists and it's flowing on its way to you, you don't have to know how it's going to get there, but you have faith that it's coming. That gets you out of resistance mode as well, because instead of worrying about how it's going to come and pulling your hair out, waking up screaming in the middle of the night because it's not there yet, you just have like a calm faith about it. And so that again opens up the allowance and opens up the surrender. And so the combination of faith, just that non-worrying state and that sort of excitement state, right? Faith, if you really truly believe that what you want is on its way to you and you just know it, there's an excitement, right? And gratitude is the same thing. It's just that combination of sort of almost being grateful for the fact that it's on its way to you. You have your faith, and then you're grateful that the money that you have faith that is coming to you. Those two combined there's no room for any resistance or negativity, right?
Yeah.
So I think it can be a very tall order to have faith when you're freaking the hell out. Right. So a lot of times I think it's better to you can't, when you don't have any money, to like have faith that money's coming to you can be honestly more annoying than anything, because you're just like, seriously, like I'm living in a garage, like whoop-de-doo, like money's coming. I don't believe it. Right. So instead of that, having gratitude for other things, for my dog, for the people who love me, for the fact that my body works, for, whatever, like there's a gazillion things you can always be grateful for. So it's more about just taking your mind off the subject and having just general gratitude and opening yourself up to that frequency, and having faith that since all these other things have come to you and you're so lucky and grateful to have them, that is a form of strengthening your faith as well.
Yeah. I've heard Esther Hicks talk about that when she's channeling Abraham about, if the thought that you have is putting you into a state of resistance or still freaking you out, you have to go more general or shift your thoughts to something completely off topic that does put you in that state, because it helps you to, like you just said, open yourself up to the allowance of it. And I think Joe Dispenza talks about gratitude too, about how, like, when you open yourself into that state of gratitude, that's kind of like when you have received something, that's your first initial instinct, your first initial vibration that you're putting out is this gratitude. Oh my gosh, it's here. This is amazing. And so if we can feel for that vibration first, of course it can come. But like you said, when you're freaking out and money's like tight and you're going, oh my God, how does this work? You're keeping it all away because you're focused on the wrong end of the stick.
Exactly. And so just don't even just give it no attention at all. Just let it die from lack of attention, wither on the vine, and just look at something else.
Yeah. Neural pathways are so interesting that way. The more we feed those thoughts, the more they strengthen, the more thoughts like that join it. And so I agree, like just dropping it when you notice it, when you can have that opportunity to go, whoa, there's that thought I always think, and this is not something I want to be feeling, and can shift it. I think that's a really powerful, pivotal moment for a lot of people, because, we go into this like automatic state of being. It's just crazy. Okay. So I love, I was listening to You're Badass at Making Money again yesterday when I was outside mowing, and you said something about how you made a motto about, I just want to see what I can get away with, which I love. I have a friend who has, like, just for the hell of it, is hers. And so I'm just curious, were there any fun things that came about when you created this, like, I'm just going to see what I can get away with concept and mentality? Was there something where you, like, had you not had that, you'd never would have done it?
Gosh. Yes. And I have to now remember them, but I wrote about it with my band back when, a million years ago, when I was in my band, and, getting gigs and getting a record label and getting a record contract and all that stuff when we literally did not know how to play. So, and it was just fun, and who cared? And, and I think that mentality is so great because it does exactly what we were just talking about. It's just like, I just want to see if I can have fun with this, and I'm not going to focus on the fact that I could look like a moron or it may not work or whatever. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, writing badass, definitely. Who the hell was I to know all these things? I mean, I was certainly no guru, and yeah, a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, I think more people need that kind of like, why not? Like, why not me? What's the
Yeah,
worst that can happen if
right,
you give this a try and just see what the hell goes on, and maybe something will come of it. Maybe something that's really cool will come of it. Do you
right.
have a spiritual book or like a person that you go to or that has given you like your most aha moments? I know in the coaching program, you gave like a huge list of books that you recommend, but was there one in specific that you were like, holy cow, this is amazing?
Well, back in the day, The Science of Getting Rich, because I was so focused on money by
Right.
Wallace Wattles. That one was definitely something I read 6,000 times. Today, I'm actually rereading The Power of Now, which was my first ever self-help book.
I love
Um,
that book. Eckhart Tolle is
yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, and you get such different things every time you read it.
Yep.
So as far as reading goes, I'm doing that, and then I do listen to Abraham Hicks every day. I love her
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Me too.
yeah. But we all have to go to the spiritual gym. It's so, I mean, that's honestly why I do my coaching programs every year, is because I need the kick in the butt, and I need to be with you guys who are out there, doing the scary things. And it's definitely nobody, you don't get to stop going to the gym.
Yeah, I agree. What does your spiritual gym practice look like these days?
Meditating every morning, and I go on a huge hike every morning too, just like being out in the woods and in the desert is my church, and reading the books and listening to the things, and
Yeah,
and
just
just
keeping it.
really shutting up and slowing down is my goal. I'm getting like a B minus, C plus.
I kind of understand that. It's hard, like when you've been in that momentum of doing things, it's hard to slow that down. And then there's almost a part where you're going, am I being lazy because I'm trying to pull back and slow down? Like, is this the right thing to do? But at the
Actually, doing great with the slowing down. Like I
okay,
snapping
good.
like a champion. The slowing down, actually, I'm speedy, like driving, talking, traveling. Like I move a million miles a minute. That's what I'm. But believe me,
Yeah.
I actually have a friend who just finished maybe his last book, and he's just like, what am I going to do now? It's like, I can teach you how to look at birds and do a crossword puzzle and take a nap. Like that's going to be my next course.
Love it. I
Yeah,
think that's so important, though. We don't do it enough in the United States. It's like we're constantly
I
feeling like you
know.
have to be going or turned
Yes.
on doing something all the time. And it just gets to be
Yeah.
so exhausting. And so many authors feel that way. Like in the indie space, there are authors who think that they have to be producing a book a month or
Yeah.
every 2 weeks all the time, because if they don't, then they're not. It obviously comes from that lack mentality, but it leads to burnout to so many people who, number one, aren't equipped for that kind of production. But I don't know. It's like I feel like we're not meant to solely be doing just that sort of thing. It's like we need almost that variety of insights, and the travel, I think it gives us so many cool experiences that allow us to write new cool things or put new ideas together or come up with new things and thoughts. It just puts us in such a different state of mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you got to fill up the tank before you can share it. And I think writing something when you don't feel inspired, or like you don't feel like you have something to say, is just filler. And nobody wants to read that. And you sure as hell don't want to write it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think if you can pull back and wait until you've got, listen, if you're a professional writer, you have to write sometimes, right? Like there's certainly times that I don't feel like writing, that I have to do it. And good things do come out. Like that's not to say that you have
Yeah.
to wait for the almighty inspiration, and only then will you put,
Right.
but but I do think if you can wait until it feels like, I always have to feel sort of like I can't shake it off my leg. And then I'm like, fine, I'll write you.
Right.
Uh, but also that thing that you were talking about, like our value is sort of based on what we're producing in this country. And I think more value being placed on having fun and doing what feels good and authentic is way more important. But
Yeah. Well, and I think when you have deadlines and you do have specific things that you're trying to meet, you can tap into that fun element, and you can tap into,
yeah,
of course I can make this more interesting. Of course, the insights are going to come. So it doesn't have to just be waiting for the inspired hit to come your direction. It can be almost that intentional. I'm going to go into meditation and I'm going to ask the universe to bring me the insights I need for this thing. And sometimes it happens, at least I found this, I don't know if you have, sometimes it happens in the meditation. And then sometimes it's like you're working out 2 hours later and you're like, what the heck? Where did that just come from? But okay,
Totally.
it's crazy. I think that's really cool. And there is this kind of like combination of manifestation where some people have to actively be seeking it out, putting themselves in that, pressure cooker, which is why I like the way that you taught the group coaching, because you have this 8 weeks, you have this one thing that you're going to try to manifest, you're going to do it, come hell or high water. Here's the steps to make it happen. It's amazing. Plus, obviously, the group calls that you had when you had it launching that way. And it was just, it to me, I'm a double Virgo. So I love having like that pressure, that time frame, that like, let's go into this thing. It makes me happy. But there are other times where I like to be more superfluous and be like, okay, universe, just show me what you want to do next and we'll do this thing. And I think there are a lot of people who think that manifestation only goes one way or the other, but I think there's multiple ways that we kind of are doing it all the time. Do you find that there's one for you that you tend to lean on most? I think it's probably the pressure, isn't it? Especially with the badassery. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's interesting.
Totally.
Yeah. Do you like other methods of manifestation where it feels different, like the just allowing it to come?
I wouldn't know because I don't do anything until I'm panic stricken. So I have no idea what that's like to have just like, oh, I'm going to wake up. Yeah.
How did you get panic stricken to write Badass? The first one.
Oh, well, that's why, the beautiful thing about nonfiction books is you sell the book proposal and then you get a deadline from grownups who make you sign something, give you money and expect it. And so,
Gotcha.
I give you 8 months, I wait 7 and then I start writing. So
I can understand that. Yeah. Well, and it's like, there's a certain amount of power in that too, because it's like now all of a sudden you can bring the energy in, focus it, harness it, and like do the damn thing. Were you one of those kind of kids that like waited until the paper was due and then the night before started writing it?
Oh, absolutely.
For college. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have friends like that.
Uh-huh.
I was very much the Hermione. It was like, oh, are we done with class? Okay, hang on. I got to go start that thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I've gotten a little better at that now. Now I kind of procrastinate a little bit because I know what I'm capable of.
I think if it works, I've written, I don't know, 6 books maybe, and all of them I've done that way. And it's like, if it's not, and this whole thing about like having balance in your life, it's like, I'm balanced. I, weep for a week and then I start writing for a month and then I go backpacking, And so it's like, that's my balance, full on or full off. So
I think that's important to note. Like everybody does have their own unique balance. It's not,
there's a great way to do it.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. It can, can definitely be all sorts of things. So I have when you were writing You're a Badass at Making Money, was that already at the point, it must have been because You're a Badass was out, where you had shifted your money mentality, you had gotten to the point where money was flowing. Did it feel the way you expected it to feel when you were first trying to allow the money in, when you're trying to get over that brokenness part of it?
I don't know if I expected it to feel anyway, because it was so unknown to me. I just could not fathom it at all. Like it was impossible.
Okay.
I really felt like it was impossible because I was in my 40s and I was, I just didn't know what. I felt like people who made money were almost a different species than I was. And I remember my coach saying to me, she was like, you could literally make your annual income in a month. And I was like, I don't even know if my brain can comprehend what you just said, but I was like, oh my God, what if I made my annual income in a month? And and it was honestly a series of every day doing something that scared the living hell. I had a really good coach, thank God. Yeah. But she made me double my prices every single time I was teaching this I learned how to put together this online course about teaching entrepreneurs how to write and sell their nonfiction book proposals, and which in itself was terrifying because remember, I was really cool. I was a rocker. I didn't want to be some cheesy online marketing person. And she said to me, she's like, well, you can be broke and cool or rich and cheesy. Like, what's your choice, dumb? I was like, okay. And so I started doing that. And then, and then it led to 2 things. First of all, coaching writers. I found like a lot of it was coaching them on the actual book proposal and the layout and the sales page and all the things. But I'd say 80% of it was coaching them more on giving them permission to have something to say and to get them over their fear of looking like an idiot and fear of, all So I learned how to be a life coach through that. And then, but it also taught me to write in my own voice, because online marketing has such a tried and true way of doing things. You know, a bunch of nerds have tested to see if a capital T gets you more sales than a lowercase t, whatever.
Yeah.
So I was doing it the way everybody else did, and had my little business suit and was doing my, whatever the drill was for that. But then I started writing my newsletters in my voice. And that's sort of what led to You Are a Badass, because, self-help was very sincere and very sort of guru-esque. And then because I was learning to write something that was traditionally written a different way in my own voice, that honestly, I think was also why I got the idea to write You Are a Badass. So you just never know where anything is going to lead. But if I hadn't taken that step and I hadn't gotten out of my comfort zone and done all that stuff, and then as far as money went, every time I taught that class, she made me double my rates, which was terrifying for all the reasons,
Right.
And I was just constantly being pushed financially to do stuff that was terrifying. And
that's interesting.
One of the things that really helped me, I listened to that Abraham Hicks financial meditation every morning and every evening. And it's all about getting into the flow with money.
Yeah.
And talk about, that was something that I would literally wake up in the morning and have more money in my bank account.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Because money is currency and currency is frequency. So money is energetic. And so when my energy was just, when I got out of my own way, that made my hair stand up. And I had a million examples of energetically pulling in money I was doing all the things. I mean, talk about like cramming it in. I was like doing every single thing every day, reading a million books, meditating my ass off, putting myself in scary situations. And I mean, I started making so much money so quickly, it almost felt illegal. And I'm not kidding.
How long was that time frame? Like between you starting the process of all the books and all the things to like your financial situation switching?
Well, I was reading books for decades. I was wallowing around in that. It was once I hired Gina, my coach, and I ended up not hiring the guy for $85,000. I ended up hiring her for $85,000.
Okay.
But that leap was and I literally did every single solitary thing she said. So I guess, like, I don't really remember the time frame, but it was like 6 months. I think I tripled my income in 6 months.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I know.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I did everything she told me to. Every
Right.
single thing. Terrifying. So
that was interesting. When I was mowing yesterday, I was listening because I read the book, but I was listening to the audiobook just to be like in the vibe of it again before our call. And you had mentioned that like she had given you I assume it was her, she had given you a week to try to get $10,000, and you're like, what the hell, no? And then you shortened it to 2 days, and you end up making $15,000 in 2 days. And it was like, of course she did, because she like gave herself that like hardcore deadline and made it so non-negotiable that this is how it's going to work. Do you feel like if you have less time, it's easier to keep your energy focused? Because that seems like that way for me, where if I have too long of a period of time, it's easy to just kind of like be like, well, it'll eventually be here. But then when you actually feel the energy of, I don't know, that deadline or that push, now all of a sudden it's like you can pull more. I don't know, you can pull more from the field, if you want to say it like that, like all of a sudden it's there. It's so weird.
Well, you're more focused. You don't have time to go around. I mean, you really don't. That's it. Like, what do they say? Like in an 8-hour workday, people who have day jobs, like you end up actually working for 3 and you spend the other around. Right. So when you don't have the luxury of that extra time, you are all focus,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's Parkinson's law, right? Work will expand or contract up to the time allotted for it. So time to like make that push and give yourself like a hardcore deadline to just get over your dang self, people. So one of my friends, Christine, she does the Money's Emotional podcast, and she wanted me to ask this question because this was like she was like, oh my God, you have to ask this question. So I was like, okay, here we go. So you've talked about in your books that it's new level, new devil, right? And so she was wondering, what new devils have you encountered as a wealthy woman versus when you were getting to this point?
Knowing what to do with my money. Like, I never had any, so I would just keep it in a jar. So now it's like, and I realized, and my bookkeeper was like, please open at least a savings account. She's like, you have $1 million in your checking account, you idiot. Like, what are you doing? It's not, I was like, so, and that shame, right? Like, I was so ashamed of just like, I feel like I'm a 7th grader. I have no idea what I'm doing. So hiring smart people who do this for a living and telling them that I don't know what I'm doing, and just being honest, being like, just the shame, or there's so much shame around money. And so that was a new shame that I had, was just feeling like an idiot when it came to that kind of stuff. And then also creating space for it to flow in. So like if I was dumping it all into my checking account and feeling like a dum-dum, I realized I was starting to block it, because I was like, I can't let any more in, because I don't know what I'm doing. So just energetically, like, opening up brokerage accounts and, whatever, doing the smart thing that people do. Yeah. And then I find I'm really cheap in weird ways now. Like I will drive around for an hour because I'm $1 for parking. So cheap about parking. And then when I'm like, are you, so, and just catching myself in sort of weird ways of, whatever. It just, I'm better at spending, like, I don't know. Everybody's got weirdness around money. Like I'm better at spending big chunks of money than I am, I'll research a wooden spoon for 4 days to get the one that's, 20,000 brand to some charity. I don't know. It's
Isn't that interesting? So it's almost like you've unlocked the higher spending, but you haven't quite gotten the smaller spending.
I know. Yeah. Like $15 a month for Netflix. I'm like, oh, that's too much money. I think Netflix. That it has like what, $200 a year, then I'm fine.
Yeah.
So I think money is really interesting. I think we all have so much going on.
Yeah. And then just being aware of that though, and being able to catch it and go, okay, this is a little bit strange. Do I have to keep thinking about it like this? Probably not. Oh goodness. Okay. So why do you think, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Why do you think that people have such hangups on money when it comes to like I know authors in general, when I'm teaching authors, the biggest thing that I found over the past few years is that when I'm trying to help them, I know what they have to do. It's like, it's either your mindset or it's going to be the actions you're taking that are not in alignment with the thing that you're trying to bring in. It's literally just these two things. But so many people are so blocked around money or it's like they've taken this vow of poverty almost, where they don't think that authors earn money from their writing. So I'm just curious, like, why do you think that we have such hangups as people, as individuals, not necessarily just authors, but around money? Do you think it's just societal? Do you think it's energetic? Do you think it's subconscious?
I think we live in a fear-based society. And so we tend to focus on greed and the horror that is caused by greed and the things that people do in order to make money, like the abuse of other humans, of animals, of our earth, like all the things that are so short-sighted that greed is responsible for. And we equate that with the desire for wealth. And greed is a form of lack. That's where I think the main disconnect is. A desire for wealth is an abundance mindset and just, being in the flow and joyful. And greed is trying to fill a hole and, the ego and being insecure and a lack consciousness. You need more because there's not enough.
Right.
And so I think that's sort of the basic misunderstanding. And when you're focused on greed, of course, you're not going to let yourself make any money because you don't want to be greedy. So I think that really is sort of the first thing. And we're taught that over. So generation. Like, certainly some people are not taught that, but I think our society teaches that.
Oh yeah.
And so that's a definite, really, really big one, and I've written about sex and I've studied religion. And I think money is by far the most loaded out of all of them. It's the dirtiest. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Do you think it's worse for women than it is men? Because at least it seems to me that men are they can switch it a lot easier than what women can, unless it's like there's almost like an emotional connection they have to make the money okay.
Well, men are raised to be more entitled.
Yeah, and I suppose
are not. And it's also, I think, seen as not feminine to be successful and make a lot of money. And that's why so many women are really thrown into their masculine sides in order to get rich. And I just think in general, not to say that men don't have trouble with it too, but I think just in general, men are raised much more entitled to put themselves first and do what it takes. And, a woman who's in charge is bossy and a man is ambitious, like all that. Then that matters, and you don't want to be that person. So subconsciously you don't let yourself.
Right. Have you done a lot of subconscious work yourself, like going into that? Like, when you were getting through all of the courses and the content and the books, did you work on your subconscious mind a lot in that beginning part?
I went to this place where you had to hit a pillow with a baseball bat and scream for 40 minutes in front of a room full of strangers. Like, yeah, I did every, that's what I mean. Like I was so no nonsense about anything that would get me where I wanted to go. I did it. So yes, I did tons and tons of relentless digging into my subconscious.
That's awesome. I think it's so important because I'm not a huge fan of blocks. I don't know how you feel about them, but to me, it just feels like when we are making choices, because I teach manifestation where it's like literally you decide, you lock in the vibe, you take the actions that inspire you to get there or that you're inspired to take to get there. And when we are in a place where we're operating from our subconscious mind, it's not that we're blocking ourselves necessarily. It's just that we are taking those next logical steps from that place, that knowing place that you're in, that it's not jiving with the new version of you that you want to go into. So in order to heal it and start shifting that timeline or taking the quantum leap, you just have to start thinking, say it so flippantly, but you know what I mean? Where it's like, you have to start thinking from that new version of you, like you did when it was like, okay, so how do I bring the money in to have this coach versus, oh, of course I can't do this, because those are the two different divergent timelines in essence. So it's like it's like the radio frequency. You haven't tuned in to that version of you just yet. You are operating from the original frequency. Do you think that people need to dig into blocks, or do you think that it literally is? Because to me, Abraham Hicks just makes so much sense. And so it's, to me, I like the idea of focusing more on who do I get to become instead? Where are you at with the whole concept of blocks?
That is the one part of her teachings that I have trouble with, because it sort of negates the need for therapy. You know, it's like, oh, just don't think about it. Focus on something great.
Okay.
And on paper, 100%. Like I absolutely agree. Like keeping it alive by thinking about it and going to therapy and dissecting it. My mom did this to me and blah, 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 blah. And I do think we absolutely can get caught in that identity and, picking at the wound and all that stuff. And I also think until you are levitating while you're meditating and able to really unhook and be that advanced, which most of us are not, I think there's value in looking at it and working through it somehow. But I do also strongly think we get way too mired in it. So it's like me when I had that breakthrough where I saw my dad and I realized that that's what was going on. I didn't want to outshine him. That was such a helpful thing to realize, because then I started visualizing him being so proud of me and I could really work with it. And so, I would tell him that, hey, Dad, I just made my first million. And at the end of the conversation, she's like, well, he has a thick Italian accent. He's like, do you need any help, Jenny? And I was like, yeah, could you give me like $200 would really help. So in the old days, I would have ripped his head off. Like, I just told you I made $1 million and you're not proud of me. You're not listening. But instead, I really understood that that's the only way he knows how to show me love. So instead of being a jerk about it, I was like, yeah, Dad, could you give me 200? And so he gets to give me 200 and feel good. I get $200. Who doesn't want that? And we on our way. So without that realization, I don't think I would have gotten there. So I'm really grateful that I knew about that. But the key is to figure it out and then not stay there. And I think we just hook into it and talk about it all the time, identify with it and all that stuff.
Yeah. I think where it comes from is that idea that like so many people want to figure out the problem. So it's coming from a place of like efforting instead of, allowing it to come to the surface naturally, like it did for you, where all of a sudden you're aware of it and you're like, oh, this is something that can now be healed. Okay. I get why this is existing and what to do about it. And you're not focused on the block itself, or the idea that it's not a good thing, or that you're not perfect, or that, whatever, however we justify the way that we do things. So I think for me, I agree with you to an extent with Abraham about focusing on like the good things, but when they do come up, they're meant to be healed. They're meant to be looked at. And that shadow work is really important to just kind of get to that place of flushing it out. It's almost like when you don't feel your emotions, it gets stored in the body, and you got to like do somatic exercises to try to like exercise it out of your system, Yeah, it's like it's not gonna not go somewhere. It's gonna linger, and you need to let it all out. Okay, so I've got one more question. So you mentioned that we choose to focus what we choose to focus on becomes our reality, which makes total sense. And I'm just curious, like in your opinion, why do you think that people, rather than focusing on all the awesomeness and the badassery that they can become, why do they focus instead on all the things that bring them down? What's the deal there?
It's their identity, because and so you want to, you don't want to basically kill yourself.
Mm.
So by focusing on the things that are known about you and known about your environment and known about the world, that gives you security. First of all, we are on a ball in outer space, and that's terrifying. So we need something to hold on to. So we need reality, and we need that to be true.
Right.
And with our own identities, like what if that's not all the truth there is, and the unknown scares the living crap out of us, right? Nothing terrifies us more than death. So, and meanwhile, death could be like a gazillion times better than what's going on right now, but we're terrified
But
of
we
it.
don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. So it's that known, the security in the quote unquote known, and we wrap our whole sense of self in that, and getting rid of that is just ultimately terrifying. But that's where all the real good stuff is. So
it's around the other side of that terrifying version that you might not know exists. Yeah, it's so interesting. Well, Jen, thank you so much. This was an absolute pleasure, obviously. So where can my audience go to learn more about your books, about what you do, everything about you? Where can I send them?
They can go to youareabadass.com, which is easier than jensincero.com, but they both go to the same place.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. This was really fun. So nice to hang out with you.
It was so nice to hang out with you too.
Well, there you have it, my friends. Okay, so it is kind of funny and a little bit ironic to me that after that first initial call, and I sat there and thought, oh, I have no questions I need to ask Jen Sincero because she's amazing and I understand everything she's saying, that I then ended up having to create and come up with a whole bunch of questions to ask Jen Sincero. But at any rate, wasn't Jen amazing? Like, she's just the most down to earth, like laid back, totally cool person on the planet. And it's super interesting to me to listen to her talk because every time I'm in her vibe, every time I'm, either reading her books or listening to her words on audiobook or when I was in her class, there's just this badassness that she just exudes. And I love it because it reminds me, myself, that I have power, right? That I have more capability to produce something awesome than I give myself credit for at times. Because when we get into this flow and this routine of who we are, what we believe we get, how this world works for us, kind of like what Jen alluded to when we're like in our present moment and we're becoming the people we are, right? We forget our power. We forget how capable we are. We forget how much we can harness the energies of the universe. And that always reminds me, like whenever I'm reading her stuff or in her world, it just reminds me of it. And I've always loved the concept of bringing together things that are seemingly in opposition, right? So whether it be science fiction and fantasy, or whether it be the manifestation with like badassness and like this sweary like thing, like the irony in it, I guess, is interesting to me because it makes you look at something and shift your perspective slightly. And for me, perspective has always been such a huge key component. And I don't know why. I don't know if it goes back to, my family life and having a brother with a brain tumor and seeing how everybody's perspective was so different. But the mind and how it works is so fascinating. And not just the mind, but the way that we create, the way that we be, the way that we incorporate things into our realities and our structures. I don't know where all those passions are going to end up bringing me, but I do know that I'm very much like Jen right now, where I'm kind of in this place of something's shifting, something new is coming, and I'm not fully sure what it looks like yet. Like, I don't know, do I stick with Author Revolution? I'm sure that I will in some capacity. I'm not going to drop everything here, guys. But like, there feels like there's another layer coming. So whether it's like I'm helping entrepreneurs or I'm reaching out into a bigger audience at some point, I don't know what it looks like. But I do know that I am just staying open and in this uncomfortable place of not quite knowing where it's headed yet. And so, obviously, being able to hear Jen say that she's in that location was validation for me. It made me feel like, okay, maybe some more of us are in this place. Maybe there's something bigger coming. What does this look like? How is it going to work for us? What are we going to do? So if you feel that way too, I hope that you know that you're not alone. I hope this episode helped you to look at your money situation or the way that you look at your world just a little bit differently. I hope her words helped you kind of shake loose some of the preconceived notions that you had in your head of what you get to have or how you get to be. I know every time, like I said, every time I am in her vicinity, whether it be words or in like listening or whatever, I'm just always so motivated to do things differently or to look at things slightly differently than I have been. And that's something that I'm going to be working on. I have been working on actually from, probably since February. So taking on this moment of like, what do we get to be? What does this get to evolve into? It's going to be new and I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's going to be epic, right? Lean into that energy and lean into your own badassness because you, my friend, you have more power and capability than you're giving yourself credit for. We all are. We are here and meant to be and do amazing things. And the energy is shifting. I don't know where it's going for us, but we are shifting into a new phase and it's going to be exciting and scary and incredible all in the same ball of wax, right? All right. So if you'd like to download the transcript to today's podcast episode, head over to authorrevolution.org/247 and you can get it there. I will also make sure that all of the links are provided inside the show notes on that page. So if you want to check out Jen, her books, her coaching, like all the things, it will all be there. And trust me when I say, like, her 8 Weeks to Badass program was super cool. Now, whether you get it as just the course or whether you sign up when she's opening up some of her group coaching, all of it is amazing. Like the whole thing just is inspiring and makes you feel like you can accomplish anything. And I think that's what we need, right? As authors, as individuals, we need to remember that we are capable of doing whatever the heck we want to do. And so check her out, check out all of the things. If you've never heard of Jen before, I don't know what rock you've been under, but definitely check out the rest of her works and have so much fun digging into it because you're going to love everything she has to say. There was literally zero in her books that I was like, that was a little weird. You're either giggling or you are like going, oh, I didn't think of it like that. Or, oh, that's so epic. The whole time, like literally the whole time. All right, guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure that you share it with your friends if you found it inspiring or interesting. Share it with your author friends because I think the more people that hear Jen's words, the more people that understand what we're capable of and how badass we can be, the better. We're here to uplift not only the author community, but the world, right? And so it all starts with each and every one of us as we get to share the insights and the modalities and the mindset shifts. The more that happens, the more we're seeing all over the world. And we want that ripple effect. We want to elevate everywhere. All right. Okay, guys, have a wonderful, badass rest of your week. Go forth and start your author revolution.